Hello, welcome back to another video on this channel. Now today the video is all about my early Premier League predictions for the 2020-21 season. I'm going to put the teams into the following categories. We've got Champions League qualifiers, Europa candidates, mid-table mediocrity, avoid the drop and relegated. Let's start then with Arsenal. So Arsenal obviously had a disappointing Premier League campaign last season. However, they did win the FA Cup, so Arteta's got his first trophy with Arsenal already, which is excellent for him and for Arsenal. Their record in the FA Cup is insane over the last 2 decades. But what I expect from Arteta and Arsenal is that I'm going to see Arteta put his stamp on this team much more than he was able to last season. Obviously, he didn't have the full season last season. Defence really let them down massively in the end. So what I expect is Arteta will play a much more passing, fluid style of football. Good news for Arsenal so far is that it looks like Aubameyang, who I rate massively. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's one of the best strikers in the league, actually. He's about to sign a new contract for Arsenal, which is huge. And of course, Willian from Chelsea has just moved across to Arsenal, who I think will do a really good job for them, actually. He's 32 now, but last season still had plenty of assists, and I think that's good news for Arsenal. But I do still worry a little bit about their defence. Are they going to be able to bring in the defenders to tighten up their defence at the back? Because ultimately that's what cost them so much last season. But overall, I think Arsenal, they're not going to be top 4 challengers. I'm going to put them in the Europa candidates section. Moving on to Aston Villa. Now, Dean Smith did really well to keep Villa up last season. Obviously, it was almost like the great escape for Villa. They just survived. But next season, I expect them to kick on. Apparently, Dean Smith's got a transfer budget of £100 million, which isn't, I mean, it is big, but it's not massive, but it's a significant sum of money. If they can keep hold of Jack Grealish and invest in a striker, because last season, you know, their top goal scorer was Grealish with 8 goals, but if they can get a 10 to 15 goal striker alongside Grealish and the other players in that team, I think they'll be all right. And I'm expecting Villa to not just escape relegation next season, I can see them being a sort of mid-table team. Okay, moving on to Brighton. Now, Graham Potter, no doubt about it, did a fantastic job with Brighton last season. They survived towards the end of the season. They pulled away during Project Restart, which was really good for them, and they weren't really in the relegation battle come the end of the season. But they only won 9 games last season, and they did draw a lot of games, and ultimately it was those extra draws compared to teams like Bournemouth, who also only had 9 wins, that saw them get out of the relegation zone. Now, that's very well done, but can they turn those draws into wins, or will some of those draws become losses? I'm going to go for the latter. I think Brighton actually are going to end up in the bottom 3, and I can see Brighton being relegated next season. Okay, moving on to Burnley. Now, Burnley, obviously, Sean Dyche, we know what to expect from Burnley. They've been doing it for years now. Solid, you know, unremarkable but effective, and you know, you've got to doff your cap to Sean Dyche, really. The job he does season after season is impressive. I would expect them to improve their home record next season. They only won 8 out of 19 games at home last season, and usually Burnley, in the first few seasons that they came up, built their success off the back of a great home record. Last season, their away record was actually slightly better. So I expect them, if they improve their home record, winning 3 or 4 more games at home, they'll be a solid mid-table team. Okay, moving on to Chelsea. Now, Chelsea are really interesting team. Now, loads of people criticised Lampard last season for losing the FA Cup final, but he did get Chelsea into the Champions League again, which wasn't a given, really, because there was a lot of competition for that last season. And Chelsea, of course, couldn't sign players last season either at the beginning of last season. So, already signed Timo Werner, who I think is going to be a fantastic signing, coming from the Bundesliga. He scored hatful of goals over there and in the Champions League too. He's got the pedigree to play in the Premier League, no doubt about that for me. He's a great signing. And, I mean, Chelsea's strength last season was obviously scoring goals. Now, Chelsea's Achilles heel last season was their defence. And last season, away from home, they conceded 38 goals, which is the same as Norwich and one more than Newcastle, believe it or not. So, Newcastle conceded 37 away goals. Chelsea conceded 38. Obviously, though, Chelsea score a lot of goals. And with the signings they brought in already this summer, they're going to score more goals. But the question is, can Frank Lampard sort out their defence? And I really can see them being a Champions League qualifier again, no doubt about that. And if they get the defence solid enough, I could see them pushing, the top 2. Maybe not. I don't think they're going to win the title, but they could be certainly challenging for a part of the season. Okay, next up is Crystal Palace. So Crystal Palace, I really worry about Crystal Palace. I think their trajectory is downwards under Roy Hodgson. I don't know what's happened at Palace, but it's just all gone a bit stale for Roy Hodgson. And what I think will happen is, I actually think Hodgson might be one of the first managers to go next season. If they don't get off to a good start, I can see Crystal Palace getting rid of Hodgson. And I can actually see them, maybe if they're in the bottom 3 early on in the season, I can see them being in that relegation battle. However, once they replace Hodgson, I think they'll pick back up and they'll finish. They'll avoid relegation, they'll avoid the drop, but I think it's going to be a tough season for Palace. And we move on to Everton now. Now, Everton, obviously, Carlo Ancelotti, really good manager, but there's nothing really to get too excited about in my view with Everton. I don't know, last season has to be disappointing for Evertonians. They had a lot of money, they finished mid-table, and I can just see them finishing mid-table again this season, to be honest. I can't see them kicking on and breaking into that Europa battle. Okay, now we move on to Fulham, one of the new boys this season. Obviously, Scott Parker, former Newcastle United club captain, brought them up via the playoffs. Well done to Scott Parker, well done to Fulham. I think there will be reinforcements at Fulham. They seem like they spend money as well. They did last time they came up, but it backfired. I can see a very similar situation happening this season. And if Mitrovic is still leading the line, this is controversial amongst Newcastle fans, but for me, he's not a Premier League striker. They're going to struggle. I think Fulham could get relegated. Okay, we move on to Leeds now, and another new team in the Premier League this season. First time in the Premier League for 16 seasons for Leeds. Far too long for a club like Leeds not to be in the top flight. Me personally, as a football fan, I'm delighted that Leeds are back in, and I am actually really excited to see what Bielsa does with Leeds in the Premier League. I think he'll be backed quite heavily, and I think he's good enough, he's a smart enough guy to buy decent players, and that squad will need improving massively in my view. I think Bielsa's the man to do it. Their high press game is going to be so interesting in the Premier League. They're going to have very, very fit players in the Premier League with the pace of the league. Can Bielsa do it in the Premier League? I think he can. I think out of all the teams that have come up, Leeds will fare the best, and I can see them finishing in mid-table mediocrity. Okay, we move on to Leicester City now, and Brendan Rodgers will be absolutely kicking himself that they didn't make the Champions League last season. The question is, can they recover as a club? Can they not dwell on that and continue to have a good season next season? They've got one of the best strikers in the league, without a doubt, in Jamie Vardy, and he will score lots of goals. Brendan Rodgers knows how to get Vardy scoring goals. So Leicester are going to be there or thereabouts. I think there's going to be more competition for the top 4 this season than there was last season, and I think Leicester really blew their best chance at a top 4 finish since they won the league a few years ago, and I don't think they're going to be able to get back into that top 4 next season. But I do think they will be there or thereabouts pushing for the Europa places. And we move on to the champions, Liverpool. Obviously, fantastic season last season. Worthy champions, absolutely worthy champions. 99 points. Jurgen Klopp has created such a dynamic and exciting team, one of the best teams we've ever seen in the Premier League. They are the team to beat, no doubt about that. I don't think they'll have as good a season next season. I think that they won't match 99 points. I can see them finishing somewhere with 85 plus points. Could well be enough for another championship though, and I do think they are the team to beat. There's no doubt about it. They're going to be Champions League qualifiers. I suspect they might even win the league again. So yeah, that Champions League for me. And of course, we then move on to Man City, who really are Liverpool's biggest challengers. And I think Pep Guardiola will be absolutely reeling after another Champions League defeat this season. And he will be putting his energy into trying to win the Champions League and prove everyone wrong next season. However, in the Premier League, they lost too many games last season. Man City lost 9 games last season. That's far too many for a team with the resources of Man City. So Pep Guardiola's already splashing the cash. You can see where Pep is building his team to tighten them up, to make them more defensively stronger. Going forward, you're never going to have an issue with Man City. They're going to score enough goals. Can they tighten up enough? Can they challenge Liverpool? I think we're on for a really good title race again next season. Obviously, Man City are going to be in the top 2. Champions League qualifiers, no doubt about that. And then we move on to Man City's cross-city rivals, Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who for me, I still can't rate the guy. I think he got a bit lucky last season. I think the signing of Fernandes was obviously exceptional. Mason Greenwood also came on really strong, and that is what carried them into the Champions League this season. And to be fair to Solskjaer, well done for doing that, because it really didn't look like he was going to do that. And obviously Leicester's drop off, they capitalised on that. However, I don't think they'll be able to repeat that next season. If Fernandes has an injury or his form drops, I really worry about Man United, because he seemed to carry that team from when he arrived to the end of the season. So it's massive that they've got him. Are they a one-man team in a sense? I don't know. Maybe that's going to be tough. I think they're going to miss out on the Champions League next season though, and I think they'll be a Europa League candidate again. Okay, now we're on to Newcastle United, my team. Now, it's really hard for me to be objective about Newcastle United, because, to be perfectly honest with you, everything about them, I'm really pessimistic. So I've tried to be a bit more objective about my views and looking at the squad and the situation and all that stuff. It's going to be a really hard season. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be difficult. My initial reaction is just to say we're going to get relegated, but the players we're looking at will improve our team, and I think that's really good. If we can bring in either someone like Chris Wood or Callum Wilson as a striker who can score 10 to 15 goals, I'll be happy with that. I'll be honest with you. I don't think we're going to do that well. We won't finish 13th again. I think Steve Bruce was lucky last season in a lot of games. We'll take that look at all day long, because we survived, obviously. We're going to be in a relegation battle, but I do think my early prediction is that Newcastle will avoid the drop. And it's on to another Yorkshire club. So we've talked about Leeds. Now we're going to talk about Sheffield United. Sheffield United, great season last season. Chris Wilder deserves all the praise that came his way. Well done to him. But for me, alarm bells were ringing after Project Restart, because once that momentum went with Sheffield United, I think their true colours emerged, and I think they were a pretty average team after Project Restart. Their last 8 games, they only managed 1.25 points per game. So that's a big drop. And I think that they will struggle. A bit of second season syndrome in a sense. I don't think they'll get relegated, but I can honestly see them in a relegation battle next season, unless in the next few weeks they sign some players that convince me otherwise. So for me, Sheffield United, maybe a bit of a surprise to some, avoiding the drop. And then it's on to Southampton. Now, another manager who's gone on and done his job pretty well and without too much fanfare or praise is Ralph Hasenhüttl. He has done a really good job at Southampton. I mean, they finished on 52 points, 11th place. Saints fans must have been well chuffed with that, I have to say. And I expect to see more of the same from them next season. I think solid mid-table team. And so it's on to Spurs. Now, for me, Spurs are an interesting one. Jose Mourinho, born winner, really determined to be the best in the game. Some people saying he's now past it, his time's gone. For me, that I think what he'll do is he'll imprint his style onto Tottenham, and I'm not sure Spurs fans are going to like that, but they're going to become much more of a solid defensive team, which is obviously not a bad thing. They've got good attacking players. They've bought a couple of attacking wingers as well. They've got Harry Kane, so if they can keep him fit, they're going to be scoring enough goals. I can see them conceding fewer goals next season, and I actually do believe that Tottenham will be in the top 4. Okay, 3 teams left, all beginning with W. We'll start with West Brom, the final new team in the league that we've seen this season. And we've got Bilic as manager, obviously. They're going to find it really tough. I mean, West Brom, their resources are limited in a sense. I think Bilic is a pretty good manager, but I think it's going to be a relegation battle all over for West Brom. I just think they're going to be hamstrung by the quality in their squad, and actually I can see West Brom going straight back down and relegated. Okay, and then we move on to West Ham United. Now, West Ham obviously survived. They had a close run thing last season. They were definitely in that relegation fight right until the last couple of games really last season, and they managed to pull themselves out of it. I do expect Moyes to improve them slightly next season. They've got some good talent in their squad too. They've got some good players. I mean, obviously Antonio scored 10 goals last season, but remember 4 of those goals came against a relegated Norwich team. So, you know, he only scored 6 goals last season. They need a striker who scores more than that. Can they get one? Can Antonio step up and do better? Time will tell on that. However, I think they'll be fine, and I do actually think that they're not going to pull up any trees next season, but I think there will be mid-table mediocrity all the way. And then finally we come to Wolves. Now, I have to say, as a neutral, I've really enjoyed what's happened with Wolves over the last few years. You know, they're a former giant of the game. I think a lot of people don't realise that these days, that, you know, during the 70s, Wolves were a big deal, and I like having clubs like Wolves in the Premier League. I think it makes the Premier League better to have these bigger clubs, you know, Wolves, Leeds, even Villa. It's good to have teams like that in the Premier League with big support. Their manager, Nuno Santo, absolutely brilliant. He's invested well in the team. He's got a plan. They're progressing season after season. They were a bit unlucky in the Europa League. It's a shame to see them go out the way they did. But, you know, they've got one of the best strikers in the league in Jimenez, who scored 17 goals last season, but also chipped in with 6 assists too. I mean, that is massive. What a player he is. If they can keep him fit, they'll be fine. I don't think they're going to have enough for the top 4 still yet. That might come in the next couple of years or so. However, they will absolutely be fighting for that 5th place or 6th place for those Europa League positions. I'm absolutely sure of that. So my prediction for them, Europa candidates. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you think to my early season predictions. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Who have I got right? Who have I got really wrong? Do you think I've completely widened the mark with some teams or nailed it with other teams? Just let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, like this video too, and I will see you really soon for another video.